Hi, I'm Sharon. Welcome back. And today's story is based on the truth once again. Today's story is about Samuel Kemper, so let's get right to it. Samuel Kemper lay in state in the funeral home in Chance. Samuel had been married multiple times. He could land a woman easily, but just as easily rid himself of them. He changed wives like a man changes a shirt on a sweltering summer day. Two ex-wives of Samuel Kemper, Minerva and Sally, lived within 5 miles of each other, and their relationship, to say the least, was contentious and at times downright nasty. The brouhaha began decades earlier that would last for years when the women fought over Samuel at a school dance. Sally nicknamed Minerva Skinny Minnie. Sally said Skinny Minnie's hips were no bigger than moles on a chigger. Minerva in turn nicknamed Sally Fat Sal, saying she was so wide she had to sit down in shifts and fatter than a tick on a bloodhound. Samuel eventually married Minerva. However, trouble really brewed while he was married to Minerva because Samuel started running around with Sally. Consequently, he had children with both women. Samuel felt obligated to give Sally's children his name, even though he wasn't married to her at the time. That really fried Minerva's biscuits and was a real point of contention between the couple. After he divorced Minerva, he married another woman, and after his divorce from her, he married Sally. Considering the number of hens he'd visited, it's a real wonder he didn't end up as a feather duster. Minerva had a parcel of land that had been passed down to her through marriage. Sally, however, said the fence line was off several feet and had to be moved because it encroached on her property. The argument had dragged on for decades. The only one who knew where the line was Samuel, and he had sprouted wings and gone on to a higher hen house and therefore wasn't talking. Neither Skinny Minnie nor Fat Sal remarried, and each blamed the other for interfering in their relationship with Samuel. Both old battle axes were at the mortuary to visit him. "Looks just like I remember him," Minerva said, wiping a tear from her eye. "That's because you just saw him 2 days ago," Sally said, "when you tried to talk him into cheating me out of my property." Beauregard slipped into his office and called Deputy Rufus. "Bring, bring." "Deputy Rufus speaking. How might I help you this fine—" Beauregard cut him off mid-sentence. "Rufus, I need you up here at this funeral home right now. 2 old biddies are fixin' to fight." "That so? Sounds like a personal problem to me, Beauregard." "I'm serious. 2 old Kemper women are causing all kinds of trouble." "Well, now, ain't that the pot calling the kettle black?" "Rufus, I'm serious. They're about to go to blows." "I reckon it must be Skinny Minnie and Fat Sal." "It is. Get up here before they tear up the funeral home." All right, all right. Don't get your panties all bunched up. I'll be up there." Beauregard walked back into the chapel when he heard Minerva say, "Sally, you 2-ton heifer, you're just being ugly as usual. You can't stand that Samuel loved me more than he loved you." "Dagnabbit, you prune-face hen," Sally countered. "That's not true. I was with him longer than you. You never had anything to offer him. You could wear your bra backwards and it'd fit." Not very enticing to a vigorous man like my Samuel. That's why he was sneaking out on you to be with me." At this point, Minerva raised her fist to Sally and yelled, "At least I'm not so big that I look like I ate my brother. He didn't stay married to you because you're ugly. In fact, you were so ugly that when you were born, your mama used to borrow a baby to take to church on Sunday because she was embarrassed to take you." Sally snapped back. "He never was happy married to you. He told me about your sorry attitude. You're so ugly you'd scare a buzzard off a gut pile. Samuel told me you kept him so poor he had to have a tumbleweed as a pet." Then Minerva raised her handbag and threatened, "You're lying like a no-legged dog. He was so poor when he was seeing you because he couldn't afford to feed you. You'd eat anything that don't eat you first. I'll slap you to sleep and then slap you for sleeping." Sally stepped eyeball to eyeball with Minerva, shrieking, "Skinny Minnie, if your lips are moving, you're lying. You don't know Shinola from applesauce. I'll knock you so hard you'll see tomorrow today." Minerva swung her purse at Sally. Sally ducked and came at Minerva with her cane. Minerva screamed, "Hit me with that cane and I'll jerk a knot in your tail." At which point Deputy Rufus sauntered into the chapel. "Hold on, ladies! Put down your weapons." He intentionally placed his hand on his pistol on his hip, so's I don't have to draw mine. They didn't realize his gun was unloaded. Minerva lowered her handbag, and Sally dropped her cane on the floor. "Now, ladies, is this here fighting civilized in front of your dearly departed? Fighting over your ex-husband who's called to his great reward? Fry me in butter and call me a catfish if that's how I want people acting at my visitation. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Miss Sally, what have you got to say for yourself?" "Well, Skinny Minnie is like hemorrhoids, a pain in my behind when she shows up and always a relief when she disappears." "I do declare, Miss Sally, you're almost poetic. But this here is a business establishment, and we can't be having no fights in here. Now, Miss Minerva, what you got to say for yourself?" "Fat Sal gets my goose. She'd make a bishop mad enough to kick in stained glass winders." "I hear what you're putting down, Miss Minerva, but we can't be destroying no property." Rufus puffed out his chest. "Ladies, this here is what's going to happen, so's I don't have to arrest you. Miss Sally, I want you to leave, and then 5 minutes later, I'm sending out Miss Minerva. I want you both to go straight home." Then Beauregard bawled at the top of his lungs, "This concludes visitation tonight." All three stared at Beauregard. "I think I already handled that, Captain Obvious," Rufus said. Early the next morning, young Amelia Kemper stomped into the funeral home and sat down outside Beauregard's office. Beauregard was concerned that her pants were so tight that if she backdoor sneezed, she'd blow her boots off. She kept fidgeting with her purse. She'd open it and close it and then threaten, "Don't give Granny Sally any lip or I'll hush your lips permanently." Beauregard ambled over to Amelia. Amelia, you're as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. She opened up her purse and showed him a loaded Colt 45. Minerva better not give my granny any sass or I'm going to have the last word. Beauregard's buttocks fluttered. Her granny, Sally, would be meeting Minerva, her sworn enemy, in less than 2 hours. He needed to think fast. Amelia, this is going to be a private viewing with only your Granny Sally and Miss Minerva. After their private viewing, you can come in. Until then, everyone must wait in their car. She wasn't happy, but she left. Beauregard called Fallon. I need Bessie May. There's a little tension in the air. I need a smooth talker, and there's nobody better at calming down nerves than Bessie May. Now, he didn't include the information that at visitation he had 2 old women at each other's throat, where he ended up calling Deputy Rufus to separate them. He also didn't mention the Colt 45 in Amelia's purse. No need to ruffle Fallon's feathers with silly details. Fallon had such a tendency to overreact. Fallon was as nervous as a pregnant Jenny when it came to loaded firearms in his funeral home. When Bessie May gets through talking, people are as happy as if they have good sense. Fallon couldn't disagree with that. Okay, she's only to help you, though, not take over. Tell her to rush, Beauregard said. They'll be here soon. Minerva claimed that Sally's children, although they had the Kemper name, weren't officially Kempers since Sally and Samuel weren't married at the time they were conceived. This really fried Sally's biscuits. Sally's children were adults now, it's true, but Minerva made them feel lower than a gopher's hole when she demeaned them. Sally's kids would put keepsakes in the casket, and Minerva's family would remove them. Finally, Sally had been pushed to the limit. She stomped up to Minerva. Listen, you polecat. I'm about to fly off the handle. I want you to leave whatever we put in the casket there. Why, Sally, dear, I have no idea what you're talking about. You march to your own drummer, don't you, sweetheart? Good for you, good for you. Minerva, don't you make your gallbladder leak, pour it down my back, and tell me it's raining. You know full well what I'm talking about, Sally wailed. Me and my kids have been leaving the tenderest of treasures for my dear Samuel in this casket, and you have the stinking audacity to remove them. Fat Samuel was right. All you do is whine. If you can't run with the big dogs, you need to stay under the porch. Don't let your bulldog mouth overload your hummingbird butt, Skinny Minnie, or you'll end up bleeding like a stuck hog. Ooh, are you threatening me? Ooh, I'm trembling. Minerva held out a still hand. Color me scared, Fats. She looked at Sally's clothes up and down. Maybe you just don't realize a Medicaid card and a miniskirt don't belong on the same woman. Your children are crybabies. It's not your children's fault they weren't raised right. With that, the women were at it again. Minerva swung her purse at Sally. Sally ducked and tripped Minerva with her cane. She jumped down at Minerva, but Minerva rolled over and Sally missed. Sally landed on her belly. Oof! Minerva jumped on Sally's back and squeezed her liver-spotted hands around Sally's throat. but Sally rolled over and threw Minerva off. Both women were panting like two long-toothed wild boars. Bessie May walked in the front door when she heard Beauregard cry out in a high-pitched voice, "Ladies, ladies, ladies, Beauregard doesn't do fights. Let me out of the chapel." She ran in the chapel, where she saw the two elderly women down on the floor, rolling back and forth, jabbing at each other. Beauregard was backed up against the wall, edging and inching his way out of the chapel. Their buns were bumping, their fists were flying, the name-calling was obscene. Beauregard saw his opportunity and broke past the women to run to his office and lock the door. Bessie May shouted at him, "Call Rufus!" She heard his muffled, "Okay," from the locked door. She thundered at the two tangled on the floor, "Stop right now!" The women's arms continued to flail, while they kicked their legs wildly. The casket began to rock and roll. Crash! At the sound, Beauregard ran from his office, and his eye peeked around the corner at the fracas. His glass eye, hidden behind the woodwork, was befuddled as it studied the grains in the woodwork. The casket topped forward, and Samuel rolled out. He was the one who really separated the women. As Minerva stared into Samuel's face, she moaned, "Oh, my dear, sweet Samuel." "Shut up, Skinny," Sally stormed. "Look what you did to him. Talk about him rolling over in his casket. I just hope you're happy. Get off." As Minerva sat up, Sally kept up her tirade. "You're embarrassingly skinny. If you stood sideways and stuck out your tongue, you'd look like a zipper." Minerva slammed Sally. "You shut up. If you were an inch taller, you'd be round like a beach ball." "Both of you shut up," Bessie May commanded. "I've had enough of both of you. Now get up, both of you." Both women struggled to catch their breath. Minerva struggled to her feet and intentionally stomped on Sally's partial plate. She used her cane to smash one of Minerva's trifocal lenses. "Now," Bessie May pointed to Minerva, "you go to that pew over yonder and sit," and waving her hand at Sally, "you go to the opposite pew and sit while we wait for Deputy Rufus." Minerva picked up her trifocals with one lens and hobbled to her assigned pew. She put her glasses on. One of her eyes was red and puffy while snot was streaming down her nose. She took out her dainty handkerchief with violets and dabbed at her nose. Sally picked up her partials and gently put the cracked plate in her mouth. Her nose was swelling. When she opened her mouth to breathe, she was missing 2 teeth. She shuffled over to the opposite side of the aisle. Samuel didn't move. He just lay in the middle of the room, quiet as a mouse, and that's a good thing considering how angry Bessie May was, or he might have gotten a piece of her lip too. However, he didn't do a thing to make himself look more presentable. Meanwhile, Beauregard was still huddled in his office. He dialed Rufus. "Bring. Deputy Rufus speaking. How can I help you this—" "Shut up, Rufus. I need your help. Oh, let me guess. It's you, Beauregard. The Kemper old ladies are fist-fighting again. Did they cold-cock ya?" "No." "Dadgummit. Did they kick ya down south?" "No." "Son of a bee-sting. Did they at least take a swing at ya?" "No." "Dad blast it. Did they call you an obscene name?" "No." cried Muffin. "Rufus, I need you here right away." Let me check my calendar." "I'm serious, Rufus. They're really fighting and Bessie May is in there with them." "Well, why didn't you say Bessie May was thar? I'll be right up." Rufus stuck his bullet in his pocket and ran to the cruiser. When he entered the funeral home, it was quiet. He walked into the chapel. "Rufus, it's good to see you," Bessie May said, "although these are unfortunate circumstances." "What do you want him charged with, Bessie May?" Beauregard interrupted. "I think I can take over this conversation now, Bessie May." "No, you can't," Rufus said. "Now, as I was saying before this here doofus, who's acting too big for his britches, interrupted, what do you want done with these two old women, Bessie May?" "I think," Bessie May said, "considering the damage done, a night in jail to cool their heels might be good for them. They would still be out in time for the funeral, but it would give them time to reflect on damage done here and wasting your valuable time, Deputy. Or you could take them down to the jail, fine them, and send them home." "Bessie May, you're a saint, until someone here," and he looked at Beauregard, "here, who'd shoot craps with the devil himself. Do you mind tending to Miss Minerva whilst I run Miss Sally down to the jail? I'll be right back for her." Beauregard chimed in, I don't think I'd do that." "Why not?" Bessie May asked. "Well, just spit it out, Beauregard," Rufus said. "Well, her granddaughter was in here earlier with a loaded .45 aiming to shoot anybody that threatened to give her granny a hard time." Rufus began to tremble. "A loaded .45? Bessie May was livid. "And you're just telling us now?" "Well, it slipped my mind. I was born at night, Beauregard, but not last night," Bessie May said. "Now we need to figure out what to do." Rufus had an idea. "Beauregard, since this is your mess, y'all go out and tell her to go home." "I'll do no such thing," Beauregard said. "She could use that gun on me." "Beauregard," Bessie May suggested, "go out and tell her visitation for this afternoon has been canceled. Instead, she should come back for the visitation tomorrow." "No, I'm not going out without my shotgun." "Oh, for heaven's sakes," Bessie May said. "Wait here. I'll be right back." Both men peered through the curtains as Bessie May walked out the front door and over to the car where young Amelia Kemper was seated. They watched the female's every move. "I'm going to have to shoot you myself if Bessie May gets hurt," Rufus said to Beauregard. Beauregard backed off a little towards his office in case he needed a running start. Bessie May came back in the front door. "What'd you find out?" Rufus asked. "Amelia's not leaving without Sally. However, I did negotiate a trade." "What kind of trade?" Beauregard wanted to know. Maybe I should trade you for the gun, Beauregard." Beauregard went into his office, slammed the door, and locked it. "Nice work, Miss Bessie May," Rufus drawled. "Now, what is the trade?" "Well, I hope I didn't overstep my boundaries, but I suggested I trade Sally for the loaded .45 in her purse, and that after the funeral she could pick it up at your office. I also said there would have to be a restraining distance of 20 feet distance between Sally Kemper and Minerva Kemper at all times until the funeral was over, or they would be arrested. If that works with you, Rufus, I'll motion for Amelia to bring up her purse to the porch and I'll walk Sally out." "Sounds to me like you did right good." The exchange went smoothly. After Amelia and Sally left, they sent Minerva home. Now, what do we do with Beauregard, who's huddled in his office? Rufus wanted to know. "I say we don't bother him," Bessie May said. "I don't know about you, Rufus, but I'm ready to go home." And so they did. Was there really a loaded .45 in the lobby? There was. I hope you have a blessed day.